Welcome back here to the Jordy Culotta Show. Mikey Montook live with us here on the set. Go Chevrolet, driving, empowering us every single day. We're a little late getting to our next guest. We appreciate him being patient with us. Brody Miller, who does excellent work over at The Athletic, had a great sit-down yesterday and a great write-up with Eli Ricks, Shauna Ricks, his mother, on some really exclusive content. If you're not having a chance to read it, check it out. It's over at The Athletic. Make sure you subscribe there. Follow Brody Miller. He's on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. He's with us every week. Good morning, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Great sit down with Rick's mother yesterday, Shauna. She's got a great personality. She is very vocal and has been about Eli and her other son since they have been very small and going through the recruiting process. What did you learn yesterday in your conversation?
Yeah, I think when the news of Eli Ricks going down for the season came out, I think it was understandable, quite frankly, for a lot of people to have a lot of questions and concerns about, is this an opt-out? Is he about to leave LSU? Because, he's somebody who, quite frankly, we all heard those rumors all winter of him possibly entering the portal on any day, and those were just rumors. The LSU staff thought that, and, things like that. So when this happened, I understand a lot of people thinking that, but Shauna Ricks was very quick to point out that this is not what that was. And obviously, just to detail it, he's basically been playing off and on with torn labrums since his junior year of high school, played his whole senior year of high school with the torn labrum at IMG and still played really well. And I didn't even know this at the time, but he also played the Florida game last year when he had a pick six with the injury re-aggravated and had that black tape on his shoulder. And then even played the last two games hurt, which, that's just providing context that he's a guy who has played injured most of his career, so I don't think he necessarily minds that. But I think she noticed him basically unable to make some tackles last game and kind of unable to lift his arms. So they, decided it was time to get that surgery. And again, do I think anything's ever 100% black and white? Probably not. Of course, there's probably, and she wouldn't say this is me speculating. Of course, there's probably a little bit factored in there of, hey, this season's kind of going off the rails, and hey, his huge draft-eligible junior year's coming up. I'm sure that does factor in, but, I do think he is genuinely injured, and I think the important thing that fans wanted to hear was that they are not planning on leaving. And obviously, most people won't believe it until they see him in a jersey next fall, but they pointed out they own a home in Baton Rouge. They don't rent. They moved here. Their family's from Hammond, and they don't want to go back to California or anything like that. And they have a 14-year-old son here who they are not moving out of Louisiana no matter what. So they are pretty adamant that they're going to stay at LSU and they want to develop at TBU. And I don't know if that did, put people's suspicions aside, but at least you have from the person himself.
This could not have come at a worse time for LSU football at Orgeron and crew, right?
Yeah, of course. That's obviously the most important thing. It is, everything had been going wrong for weeks now. So, but something about the Butte and Ricks one, it just felt like everything. It was the official moment that this is just off the rails at a level that is just kind of unsalvageable, unfortunately. Where, LSU is in reality without its three best players. I think you can make an argument it's without 7 of its 10 best players. I mean, it's kind of wild the compilation of injuries you have. So now you're going in, and they haven't even started the hardest part of their schedule yet. It starts this week. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing where they are now, it's quote-unquote DBU, and you were shuffling guys around a corner just to have a roster and whatnot. I think it's pretty wild. So, yeah, this injury is officially, I think, the moment for me where I'm just like, everything that can go wrong is.
What do you expect on Saturday morning? Atmosphere, execution, play on the field? What are you anticipating this Saturday in covering LSU?
Yeah, I mean, it's LSU, so you can always surprise me, but I think a lot. But I expect a relatively weak crowd for LSU. And I've talked to people in the program that are worried about a 50-60% crowd. And again, we'll see what happens. I'm not an expert in that field, but there's a lot of expectation for it to be a rough crowd, especially combined with it being an 11 a.m. game and all the context surrounding it. And yeah, I think, there's always the thing of it's one thing when you're losing, it's another thing when there's fan apathy, and I think that's got to be the biggest concern in that LSU administration building.
Brody Miller joining us here from The Athletic, talking and catching us up on LSU football. Remember, follow him on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. The offensive line got a good compliment last night from Ed Orgeron. I know that he's saying the right things, and he's on his call-in radio show where he is spreading a positive message. But Lloyd and I and Mikey and I were talking before you came on, and it looks like Brad Davis has had an opportunity to really kind of implement some of his techniques, principles, coaching. Is there a sign for better play on the front of the offensive line, in your opinion?
Yeah, and of course there's going to be caveats of, let's not overreact. But, no, I mean, credit where it's due, considering just how, again, mind-bogglingly poor it played for 5 weeks. And, again, I just had never seen LSU line struggle like that. Considering that, yeah, you have to give credit when they step up the way they did. And I think you have to obviously lead a little bit with Cam Wire finally being back to himself and able to get the overwhelming majority of those snaps at left tackle. I mean, I think it made a difference. At least I personally saw a real difference there, and I think that means something. And I think you're right. I do think you're seeing Brad Davis' work there kind of, slowly. I'm not saying Brad Davis is a miracle worker or anything, sure, but I think you have to give him credit. So, yeah, I do think there's reason for optimism there. Am I going to point to it as a strength or anything like that? Of course not. But I think it's a very positive sign. And even if it's not even you're saying it's a strength, there's at least the fact of reality that against Auburn, they didn't even have the confidence to run in basically a three-man box because of how troubled things were. And at least Kentucky, I know it was late in the game and there's some other context there, but they were able to run in light boxes, and that's something. That is something that can open things up, and it's going to be so important considering the passing game options are weakened.
With the injuries to all of the cornerbacks, it inserts a place for Sage Ryan, somebody that's been talked about a lot around the LSU program. It's kind of like a white buffalo where we haven't really seen it yet, but people are excited to see. What do you know about him, and how can he, do you think he has a chance to impact the game in a position that just even inserted as a nickel?
Yeah, and as you were saying, they've been practicing with him at the nickel and Cordell Flott moving back outside, which, again, I think is the best solution you have because, unfortunately, other weeks you might be saying, let's move Jay Ward back to corner, but we don't even have Major Burns, so you don't even have the flexibility to do that, really. But, yeah, I think Sage Ryan is obviously a special talent who I think a lot of people, when he was coming in, really thought that guy's going to be a superstar here. And, again, I still think he is. I think he's going to probably get the start there. I've gathered just from practices, he'll make some mistakes, he'll miss some things and stuff like that where he'll make some busts, but again, he's a true freshman, also just coming off a long injury. That's not me criticizing him. It's more just kind of saying here are the expectations for a true freshman making his first real playing time. But that is not me. But at the same time, he is a special talent. I'm sure he's going to do some good stuff. And when you're in the situation LSU was in, you kind of have no choice but to choose upside over, because it's like picking a not very good player there just because they're more prepared isn't really an option when you're about to play Florida, Ole Miss, Bama, etc. So, yeah, I think Sage Ryan's definitely moved there, and I'm really interested to see how ready he is because, he is just coming off an injury.
We talked a lot about Andre Anthony and obviously he's not able to be able to play with the team, but he calls his own team meeting. What have you seen in his ability to kind of be a leader from the sidelines whenever he's still has the cachet with LSU to call a team meeting and people respond? And it seemed like it was positive news, which is something that you don't always get from a team meeting within LSU.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I won't. This is only my fourth season covering LSU, but even in that time, I've seen some leaders.
He's been here longer than you.
Shoot, damn, that's a good point. But I've seen a lot of leaders who get a lot of acclaim for being leaders who aren't really leaders, and no one really wants to follow them. And I've seen some really great ones. And hey, credit like Andre Anthony, I think is a guy who really is a leader who people actually just love and respect and actually want to listen to. And I think that's something. So, and by the way, I think Damone Clark is that too, for what it's worth. But so I think it's just kind of cool to see a guy who has very little reason to still keep doing this, to still really be putting that effort in. But, like you said, he's been here longer than me. He cares about this university. So, I don't know. I just think you got to appreciate that when you find it.
Brody, I got to imagine your story earlier this week, the night the dam broke for Ed Orgeron, was like wildfire on the internet. I know I couldn't wait to click on it as soon as it was published. What is it like covering Ed Orgeron and LSU football these days?
Yes, it's tough. I think a lot of it is, I'm trying to think how to put this. It's a weird existence because we all know where this is unfortunately heading right now. And I think a lot of the hardest thing of covering all this is kind of putting everything into context. And I know, you and I might not disagree on every little part of these last 40 years, but I always view this as I think Ed Orgeron did. Ed Orgeron earned that national title. I'm actually a believer in that. I think he did a lot of really, sound strategic things, fixed a lot of issues from the Miles era, culturally and practice-wise, earned it. And I think what's so fascinating is how it's not really a story of Ed Orgeron was always, suspect or all that. I personally view it as a story of just a slow whittling away of all the things that made them great. And I think that's kind of what happened these 2 years. And there are a lot of reasons for that personally and on the field too. But I think that's what's made it so weird to follow is just watching a program where, I don't know, you just had so many. I mean, it's weird for me. I've only covered Ed Orgeron at LSU, so I only know how to cover this to some extent. Now you're just seeing everything around it just different. The way people are talking to you is just kind of different. The way, the confidence in trying to fix things is just kind of different. And it's just a weird tone right now. But a lot of it is kind of right now for me is preparing for the next few weeks.
What do you anticipate that to be like? I mean, I know we were all speculating on whether he's going to finish the year. Does it happen within the year? Does he get a chance to try and write this thing? What is your anticipation on how this thing plays out?
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit, I think that's been the one thing in this process that I've really struggled with kind of nailing down is Scott Woodward's thinking on something like this. And I don't really have I think there's a part of my head that thinks it will be when they see fan apathy this weekend. And, I always go back to Andy Staples', well put line back during the Florida State Willie Taggart firing when it's not about when you can afford to pay the buyout. It's about when you can't afford not to when it comes to losing fan interest and whatnot. And, I think that's one theory. But I think a lot of people around the program wonder if it's going to be the bye week when, whoever the interim coach might be has 2 weeks to kind of get things in order and, and do that. But again, just going back to, and I know a million people have said this, but Scott Woodward doesn't really fire people in season. He doesn't really fire people until the next move is 100% lined up. So that's a couched answer, but the honest truth is it's a hard man to really completely know what he's going to do. And I think all three of those are really best possible solutions.
Has anything popped out in covering the program on the changes of the culture overhaul in 19 to where they are now? Because to me, if I was to define, or if somebody asked me, give me one term of the issue for LSU football, I would say culture. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. 2019 felt as if they were an NFL team. They were running at such a high level.
Yeah. No, it's. I think that's the fundamental thing too. I think there's a little bit of. I think Ed Orgeron's had distractions these last 2 years, and I think that might have been I think that kind of chips away at things, and I think I always start everything with this by saying I think there's almost. I have a story coming out eventually where one person says if 2019 was a perfect storm of everything going right, everything these last 2 years has also been a perfect storm of everything going wrong. And there's absolutely some truth to that.
There is.
That's not to take blame away from Ed Orgeron. That's just valid. And I think what you see with the culture is, okay, 2019 was this group, a lot of guys from that 2017 class. They really focused on character. They had a bunch of juniors and seniors who not just were the star players, but were the grinders, the guys who would hold somebody else accountable if they messed up. And, I think you talk to multiple people in the program and they'll say practice is just different now. It's Orgeron's tenser than he used to be, I think. And then, you talk to people who say, there's no Devin White or Lloyd Cushenberry or Clyde or Patrick Queen, and the list goes on and on from those past rosters who will really hold everyone accountable and say, get your, stuff together because, you can't slack like that. They have good guys who are good leaders, but I don't think they have those stars who are also the guys who are going to do that. And I think that's a pretty real thing. I think Zach Von Rosenberg talked about that at length at a press conference last year, but I think that's real. And I think that's a big part of it. And it's tough because a lot of their best players these last, lately are freshmen and sophomores. And maybe the kind of freshmen and sophomores who aren't exactly the I am going to speak at, call everyone out type, And then on top of that, and someone pointed out a good point to me, even looking back to 2020, even that was kind of tough because Jamar Chase opts out right before the season. Well, that's 8 months of first-team reps that didn't go to a younger guy who's about to get thrown into it. And same with Terrace Marshall, and same with Tyler Shelvin. And I know that's a small thing, but I even think there's a validity to that where it's oh, shoot, now you just lost your leaders, and now the guys stepping up don't even have those reps. And I just think there's a lot of that where they just don't have the infrastructure, I think, of leadership.
Brody Miller, you can hear him weekly here on the Jordy Culotta Show. You need to follow him on Twitter at Brody A. Miller. Make sure and subscribe to The Athletic if you have not already done so, and hit those notifications for your LSU news as Brody is on the beat there for The Athletic.